Vivid verses.
The thing about marrying your college sweetheart is that you never really get to see who they become under pressure. You meet them in the controlled environment of dorm rooms and dining halls, where the most significant decision is which fraternity party to attend or whether to skip Friday's lecture. You fall in love with potential, with promise, with the person they might become. I learned this lesson in a law office on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 7 years after saying I do. My name is Daniel Whitmore, and at 31, I'd built what most people would consider a successful life. VP of Analytics at Meridian Tech Solutions in Columbus, Ohio, a mid-sized software firm that had carved out a profitable niche in healthcare data management. The kind of company that didn't make headlines but paid well enough that our three-bedroom craftsman in Grandview Heights was almost paid off. Rachel sat across from me in the attorney's office, her fingers wrapped around a coffee cup from Barrett's, the local chain she'd always preferred over the national brands. She hadn't touched it in 20 minutes. The steam had long since stopped rising. "I need you to understand," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of reasonableness that I'd learned meant the decision was already final. "This isn't about you. It's about me finally pursuing what I should have done years ago." The attorney, a woman named Patricia Hendricks with steel gray hair and the efficient manner of someone who'd seen this conversation 1,000 times, made a note on her legal pad. She'd already explained that Ohio was a no-fault divorce state, that with no children and a relatively simple asset division, this could be finalized in 6 to 8 weeks. Rachel continued, "The MBA program at Northwestern is incredibly demanding. It's full-time, 2 years, and the career services director was very clear that students who try to maintain relationships often struggle academically. I've already been accepted. I've deferred once. I can't keep putting my life on hold." Interesting choice of words, I thought. Her life. As if the past 7 years existed in some kind of temporal holding pattern. I'd known this was coming, of course. Not the specific details. The MBA program was a new wrinkle, but the general trajectory. There had been signs for months. The way she'd stopped asking about my day. The separate checking account she'd opened just to keep her freelance income organized. The weekend trip to Chicago she'd taken alone in January, ostensibly to visit her college roommate, but which I'd later discovered included a campus tour. Most people, when confronted with the dissolution of their marriage, react emotionally. Anger, pleading, bargaining, the standard stages of grief performed in real time. Patricia Hendricks probably had a mental bingo card. I did none of those things. Instead, I ran the numbers. 7 years of marriage. Joint net worth. Approximately $340,000, mostly in home equity and retirement accounts. Rachel's earning potential with an MBA from Northwestern. Probably a 50 to 60% increase over her current salary as a marketing coordinator. My earning potential without the emotional and logistical burden of a spouse who'd mentally checked out. Unquantifiable, but certainly not negative. Her opportunity cost of staying. The prestige of a top 20 MBA program and whatever life she decided awaited her in Chicago or New York or San Francisco. My opportunity cost of fighting this. Time, emotional energy, and the prolonged exposure to someone who'd already made their choice. The math was simple. I agreed to all the terms, I said, signing the preliminary separation agreement that Patricia slid across the table. The house goes on the market. We split everything 50-50. I'd like to use Hamilton and Ross Real Estate. They handled my parents' last sale and were efficient. Rachel blinked. "That's it? You're just okay with this? Would you prefer I not be?" No. I just thought you'd want to discuss it more. Try to understand my perspective. Your perspective, I thought, is that you've convinced yourself that your unhappiness stems from external circumstances rather than internal dissatisfaction, and that a change of scenery and a graduate degree will somehow address the fundamental lack of self-awareness that's driven this decision. But explaining that would require you to hear it, which you won't. What I said was, I understand your perspective perfectly, Rachel. You want to pursue an MBA. That's a valid choice. It's incompatible with our marriage. Also valid. There's nothing to discuss. Patricia Hendricks allowed herself the smallest smile. She'd probably expected this to take 2 hours. We were finished in 40 minutes. The house sold in 3 weeks, $30,000 over asking. The Columbus market was hot that spring, and our place in Grandview Heights, with its original hardwood floors and the kitchen I'd renovated myself, was exactly what young professional couples were hunting for. I didn't attend the final walkthrough. Rachel handled it. We communicated through Patricia's office, splitting the proceeds via wire transfer. Clinical. Efficient. You're taking this remarkably well, my father said over the phone. He was calling from Phoenix, where he and my mother had retired 2 years earlier. Your mother's worried you're suppressing your feelings. Tell Mom I'm fine. Feelings are just neurochemical responses to stimuli. I'm choosing to interpret the stimuli differently. That's not how emotions work, son. Isn't it? There was a pause. My father, a retired civil engineer, understood systematic thinking. Where are you going to go? I'm considering options. The truth was, I'd already made my decision. The divorce had freed me from the geographic anchor of Rachel's family in Cincinnati and her network of friends in Columbus. Meridian Tech Solutions had been courting me to relocate to their Austin office for 6 months, sweetening the offer with each passing week. Director of Strategic Analytics, 20% salary increase, equity package, relocation assistance. I'd been declining because Rachel had made it clear she wasn't interested in Texas. It's too hot, she'd said, and I don't want to be that far from my family. Her family. The Porters, Thomas and Diane Porter, who lived in a sprawling McMansion in the Cincinnati suburb of Harrison Ridge and who'd never quite forgiven their daughter for marrying someone whose parents weren't members of the Lakewood Country Club. Rachel's older brother, Brett, a commercial real estate developer who drove a Lexus he couldn't quite afford and gave me investment advice I never asked for. Her younger sister, Ashley, who'd married a dermatologist and seemed to measure her self-worth in Instagram engagement metrics. The Porters have been perfectly civil to me for 7 years, in the way people are civil to service staff they'll never see again. Polite inquiries about my work that never extended to actual interest. Carefully neutral expressions when Rachel mentioned our vacation plans or home improvement projects. I'd noticed, but I'd never cared. They were part of the package deal, like Rachel's tendency to leave cabinet doors open or her insistence on watching reality television. Now they were Rachel's problem exclusively. I accepted the Austin offer 3 days after the divorce was finalized. Austin in June was admittedly hot, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer above parking lots and turned car steering wheels into instruments of torture. But the Meridian Tech Solutions office was in the domain, a planned development of glass towers, upscale retail, and restaurants that seemed to serve exclusively small plates and craft cocktails. My new apartment was in a building called the Zenith, 12 floors up with a view of the hill country to the west. Minimalist furniture, fast internet, a gym on the 2nd floor I actually used. The work was challenging in the way I'd been craving. Meridian's healthcare clients were expanding, and the data analysis required genuine innovation. I was building predictive models for patient readmission rates, optimization algorithms for surgical scheduling, risk assessment tools for insurance underwriters. I hired a team, found a brilliant data scientist fresh out of Carnegie Mellon named Priya Chandrasekhar, who could code circles around our senior developers. Recruited a former Mayo Clinic analyst who understood healthcare workflows in ways that pure tech people never would. Within 4 months, our division's revenue was up 18%. Within 6 months, I'd been promoted to senior director. Within 8 months, the CEO, a whip-smart woman named Catherine Park, who'd sold 2 startups before 40, pulled me into her office and asked if I'd be interested in eventually moving into a VP of innovation role. We're planning to spin off the healthcare analytics division into its own subsidiary, she said. I need someone who can scale it. Someone who understands both the tech and the business development side. What's the timeline? 12 to 18 months. But I wanted you thinking about it now. Equity structure, leadership team, go-to-market strategy. I want your input. This was the kind of conversation that would have required 3 discussions with Rachel, a spreadsheet of pros and cons, consultations with her father, and ultimately a decision driven by her anxiety rather than opportunity assessment. I'm interested, I said. Send me the preliminary business plan, and I'll have thoughts by Friday. Catherine smiled. You don't need to think about it. Talk it over with anyone. I trust my analysis. If the numbers work and the strategic direction aligns with market opportunities, there's nothing to think over. That Friday, I sent Catherine a 12-page memo outlining a phased approach to the spinoff, including talent acquisition priorities, technology infrastructure requirements, and a go-to-market strategy that targeted 3 underserved verticals in the healthcare space. The following Monday, she forwarded it to the board with a note. This is why I recruited him. My personal life, such as it was, remained deliberately uncomplicated. I dated occasionally. A professor of applied mathematics at UT who appreciated that I didn't require constant texting, a patent attorney who'd relocated from Silicon Valley and understood the value of professional focus. Nothing serious. Nothing that required compromise or negotiation or the elaborate emotional calculus that Rachel had seemed to demand. I was, in the classical sense, thriving. The call came on a Tuesday evening in November, 14 months after the divorce. I was in my apartment, reviewing a proposal for a machine learning enhancement to our patient readmission model. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was 513, Cincinnati. I almost didn't answer. Daniel? It's Diane. Diane Porter. Rachel's mother. I felt something in my chest. Not quite surprise, more like the recognition of a pattern I should have anticipated. Diane, this is unexpected. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. You are, I thought. But please continue. Not at all. What can I do for you? There was a pause, and I could hear her recalibrating. She'd probably expected me to ask about Rachel immediately, to show some indication that I've been waiting for news, for contact, for something. Well, I want to reach out because it's been over a year, and I thought perhaps we could talk. About Rachel. What about her? She's going through a difficult time. The MBA program didn't work out the way she'd hoped. She's had to take a leave of absence. Interesting. I pulled up my laptop, opened a browser, and typed Northwestern Kellogg MBA academic probation. The search returned the standard policies. Academic probation typically required a GPA below 3.0. In an MBA program, that suggested serious struggles. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, my voice neutral. But I'm not sure why you're calling me. Because she misses you, Daniel. She's realized she made a mistake. She's been asking about you, wondering how you are, whether you might be open to talking. Translation: she's struggling, her grand plan has fallen apart, and she's looking for a safety net. Diane, I appreciate you calling, but Rachel and I are divorced. We've both moved on. Have you, though? Really moved on? Because from what I hear, you're living alone in Texas, working all the time. That doesn't sound like someone who's moved on. The presumption was remarkable, as if the only valid form of moving on was immediately coupling up again, replicating the same patterns with a different person. I'm curious, I said. How did you hear about my living situation? A pause. Rachel may have checked your LinkedIn, and Brett knows someone at Meridian. Of course, the Porters were nothing if not connected, at least in their own minds. Brett's network of commercial real estate developers and country club buddies probably extended to Austin. Someone had reported back, Daniel's doing well. Really well. Promotions, equity, the whole package. And now Rachel was struggling. And suddenly the relationship that had been too demanding for her MBA ambitions was worth reconsidering. The calculus was transparent. I see, I said. Well, I appreciate the update, but my answer stands. Rachel made her choice. I respect it. I moved forward. Daniel, everyone deserves a second chance. Surely you can understand that she was scared, that making life decisions at 30 is overwhelming, that. Diane, I'm going to stop you there. Rachel is a 32-year-old adult who made a calculated decision to end our marriage because she believed it would improve her life outcomes. That decision was hers to make. The consequences of that decision are also hers to manage. That's remarkably cold. It's remarkably clear. There's a difference. I ended the call. Within an hour, my phone buzzed again. This time, Brett Porter. I let it go to voicemail. The message was predictable. Hey Daniel, it's Brett. Listen, I know Mom called you. I just wanted to say, man to man, that Rachel really is going through it. She's back home. She's depressed. And I think she's realized that the divorce was a huge mistake. I'm not saying you owe her anything, but maybe just a conversation. For old time's sake, give me a call. I deleted the message. The next day, Ashley Porter sent a text. Hi Daniel. Hope you're well. Just wanted to reach out about Rachel. She's really struggling, and I think talking to you might help. Let me know if you're open to it. 2 hearts. I blocked the number. The pattern was clear. The Porters had decided that Rachel's failed MBA attempt and subsequent depression were problems that could be solved by resurrecting the marriage. They'd probably constructed a narrative. Rachel had been temporarily confused, seduced by ambition, but now she'd learned her lesson and returned to her senses. And I was supposed to what? Welcome her back. Pretend the past year and a half hadn't happened? Ignore that she discarded our marriage with the casual ease of someone decluttering a closet? The presumption was staggering. 2 weeks later, I was in San Francisco for a healthcare technology conference. Meridian was showcasing our predictive analytics platform, and I was scheduled to speak on a panel about machine learning applications in clinical settings. The conference was at the Moscone Center, and my hotel was the Fitzgerald Grand, a boutique place in Soma that Catherine's executive assistant had booked. The kind of hotel that had a lobby bar where venture capitalists made seed deals over Japanese whiskey. I was having a drink there after the first day of panels, Hibiki 17 neat, when my phone rang. Rachel. She'd been blocked, but she was calling from a different number. I stared at the screen for a moment, running the decision tree. Answer and establish clear boundaries. Ignore and let the behavior continue. Block the new number and wait for the next attempt. The bartender, a woman with intricate tattoo sleeves and the knowing expression of someone who'd seen every variety of human drama play out over a bar, caught my eye. Bad news. Ex-wife. The universal bad news. She refilled my water glass. You don't strike me as someone who gets rattled easily. I don't. Then why the hesitation? Good question. Why was I hesitating? Because despite my careful analysis, despite my emotional discipline, some small part of me was curious. Curious what Rachel would say, what argument she'd make, what version of reality she'd constructed in which calling her ex-husband 14 months post-divorce made sense. I answered, Daniel. Her voice was different, smaller. The confidence that had characterized our marriage, the easy assumption that things would work out, that life was fundamentally manageable, was gone. Rachel, I got your number from Brett. I know you've been avoiding my family's calls. I haven't been avoiding them. I've been declining them. There's a difference, right? Of course. You always were precise about language. There was a pause. I waited. If she'd called me, she could drive the conversation. I'm back in Cincinnati, she said, living with my parents temporarily. The MBA program, it didn't go well. So I heard. My mom called you. She did. And you weren't interested in talking. I wasn't interested in resuming a relationship with someone who ended our marriage because it was inconvenient to her career plans. No, I heard her breath catch. That's not fair, Daniel. It wasn't about convenience. It was about pursuing something important to me. And how did that work out? It was cruel. I knew it was cruel even as I said it. But there was also something clarifying about cruelty in these circumstances. Rachel had spent our marriage wrapped in layers of justification and rationalization, telling herself stories about her choices that cast her as the protagonist in some aspirational narrative. Someone needed to puncture that narrative. It was harder than I expected, she said quietly. The program was intense. The competition was brutal. And I didn't have support. Translation, you weren't there to manage my anxiety, edit my papers, and tell me I was capable when I doubted myself. Rachel, you chose to do the program alone. That was the entire premise of the divorce. I know. And I was wrong, Daniel. I was wrong about all of it. I thought I needed freedom and independence and space to figure out who I was without being someone's wife. But what I actually needed was partnership. Your partnership. The bartender was pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. I didn't blame her. This was quality drama. You had my partnership, I said. For 7 years. You terminated it. Can we meet? Please? I'm willing to come to Austin, or we could meet somewhere neutral. I need to talk to you face to face. Here was the decision point. The moment where I could choose engagement or disengagement. Where I could open the door to possibility. Maybe not reconciliation, but conversation, closure, understanding, or close it permanently. I thought about Rachel at 23, laughing in my apartment while we assembled IKEA furniture, convinced we could figure out anything together. Rachel at 27, crying in my arms after her grandmother died, trusting me to hold her grief. Rachel at 30, telling me she needed something I couldn't provide. And I thought about myself at 32, sitting in a hotel bar in San Francisco, speaking on panels, building companies, living a life I'd constructed deliberately in the absence of her. No, I said, we can't meet. I don't want to talk face to face. I don't want closure or conversation or whatever you think you need from me. I want you to understand something very clearly. You made a choice. It was your right to make that choice. But choices have consequences. You don't get to unmake them because they didn't work out the way you'd hoped. Daniel, I'm not angry with you, Rachel. I'm genuinely not. You did what you thought was right for you. I've done the same. But we're not married anymore. We're not partners. We're not even really friends. We're people who used to know each other. And I like to keep it that way. So that's it. 7 years means nothing. 7 years means exactly what it was. 7 years. They're in the past. They don't create an obligation for the future. She was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing. Part of me, the part that had loved her, that had built a life with her, wanted to soften, to offer comfort, to be the person she remembered, the person who solved her problems and made her feel safe. But that person had been a partner in a marriage, and the marriage was over. I should go, I said. I hope you figure things out, Rachel. I really do, but I can't be part of that process. I ended the call. The bartender slid another whiskey across the bar. On the house. That sounded rough. It was necessary. Necessary can still be rough. Fair point. The call stopped after that. For about 2 weeks. Then they started again, but different. More desperate. More frequent. Thomas Porter called from his office at Porter & Associates, the insurance brokerage firm he'd inherited from his father. Left a voicemail about family and forgiveness and not letting pride get in the way of happiness. I didn't return it. Diane texted, A long message about how Rachel was seeing a therapist, working through her issues, becoming the person she was always meant to be. The subtext was clear. She's fixing herself for you. I didn't respond. Brett showed up at the Meridian offices. That was a tactical error on his part. He must have looked up the address, flown to Austin, and assumed he could just walk in and demand to see me. But Meridian had security protocols, badge access, visitor management systems, the kind of infrastructure you develop when you're handling sensitive healthcare data. The receptionist, a sharp woman named Keisha who'd worked in tech long enough to spot bullshit from orbit, called my extension. Daniel, there's a Brett Porter in the lobby who says he needs to speak with you urgently. He doesn't have an appointment. Tell him I'm unavailable. He says he'll wait. Tell him I'll be unavailable indefinitely. Brett apparently waited for an hour before Keisha informed him that building security would escort him out if he didn't leave voluntarily. He called my cell from the parking lot. I answered this time, if only to establish clear parameters. That was childish, Brett said without preamble. Flying to Austin to talk to me and then refusing to come downstairs? You showing up at my workplace without an invitation was childish, I replied. I'm currently in a meeting about our Q4 revenue projections. What did you need? I needed to talk to you about my sister. We have nothing to discuss regarding your sister. She's falling apart, Daniel. She's depressed. She's not sleeping. She barely eats. My parents are worried she's going to. Going to what, Brett? He hesitated. Hurt herself. And there it was. The nuclear option. The emotional manipulation designed to create obligation where none existed. If Rachel is genuinely suicidal, she needs professional psychiatric care, not her ex-husband. If your parents are concerned, they should be calling mental health crisis services, not me. I'm hanging up now. You unbelievable bastard. She loved you. She made one mistake, and you're just going to... She made a calculated decision that our marriage was incompatible with her professional goals. I respected that decision. I'm respecting it now. Goodbye, Brett. I blocked his number. Then I called Patricia Hendricks, the attorney who'd handled our divorce. Patricia, it's Daniel Whitmore. I need advice. Let me guess. Your ex-wife wants to reconcile. Her entire family is conducting a campaign of contact. It's becoming harassment. Have you told them to stop? Repeatedly. Clearly. Document everything. Save voicemails, texts, emails. If it escalates further, we can pursue a restraining order. But honestly, Daniel, unless they're threatening you or showing up at your home, the most effective response is continued disengagement. That's what I've been doing. Then keep doing it. Eventually, they'll understand you're serious. They didn't understand I was serious. Or they understood and didn't care. The next escalation came during the holidays. Christmas Eve, specifically. I was in Phoenix, visiting my parents. My mother had made her traditional feast, prime rib, roasted vegetables, homemade rolls, 3 kinds of pie. My father and I were watching a basketball game in the living room. The comfortable silence of 2 people who didn't need to fill every moment with conversation. My phone rang. Rachel, then Diane, then Thomas, then Ashley, then Brett. A coordinated assault. My mother noticed. Daniel, is everything all right? Rachel's family is attempting what they believe is an intervention. About me taking Rachel back. My mother, who'd spent 38 years married to an engineer and understood systematic thinking, frowned. That's remarkably presumptuous. It is. Are you going to answer? No. But the calls kept coming. Every 5 minutes, cycling through the family members. Finally, at 9 p.m., Rachel sent a text. Please, just 5 minutes. I won't ask for anything. I just need to hear your voice. My father looked up from a game. Son, I generally believe in not engaging with chaos. But if you want to end this permanently, you need to communicate in terms they can't misinterpret. He was right. I called Rachel back. Daniel, thank God. Rachel, stop. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Okay, I'm not interested in reconciling with you. Not now. Not in 6 months. Not in 5 years. Not ever. That door is closed. It was closed the day you asked for a divorce. It will remain closed permanently. But if you just give me a chance to explain, there's nothing to explain. You wanted to pursue an MBA. That required ending our marriage. You ended it. The MBA didn't work out. I'm sorry about that. But the failure of your alternative plan doesn't reopen our marriage as an option. That's not fair. People make mistakes. People deserve second chances. You're right. People do deserve second chances. You had a second chance. It was the MBA program. You could have a third chance, a fourth chance, a 50th chance. But none of those chances involve me. Her voice broke. I love you, Daniel. I never stopped loving you. Love isn't sufficient basis for a relationship, Rachel. It's not even the most important factor. Compatibility matters. Shared goals matter. Mutual respect matters. Trust matters. We don't have those things anymore. We could rebuild them. I don't want to. The silence stretched for several seconds. You've really moved on, she said finally. You're not just saying that. I've built a completely new life. New city, new job, new relationships. You're not part of that life. You chose not to be part of it. That choice has consequences. I know you're successful now. Brett told me about your promotion. I'm happy for you, I really am. Are you? I thought. Or are you precisely the opposite of happy, which is why we're having this conversation? Thank you, I said aloud. I guess I just thought, if you were doing well, if you were happy, maybe you'd be more open to. Rachel, my success has nothing to do with my openness to resuming our relationship. If anything, it reinforces my decision. I'm successful because I've been able to focus entirely on my career without the emotional overhead of a failing marriage. Why would I change that? I could hear her crying. Full sobs now, not the delicate tears of earlier attempts. I need you to do something for me, I said, not unkindly. I need you to stop calling. I need your family to stop calling. I need all of you to accept that this is over and move forward with your lives. I can't. You can. You will. Because if you don't, I'm going to file for a restraining order against your entire family. I've been documenting every call, every text, every attempt at contact. I have more than enough for a harassment claim. You wouldn't. I would. I don't want to, but I will if you force me to. There was a long pause. Then, you've changed. You used to be kind. I'm being kind right now, Rachel. I'm being clear, which is the kindest thing I can offer you. You need to build a life that doesn't include me. You need to find happiness that isn't dependent on resurrecting something that's already dead. That's not cruelty. That's reality. Fine. Her voice was flat now, exhausted. Fine. I'll tell my family to stop. Thank you. Can I ask you one last question? I hesitated. What? Do you ever think about me? About us? Did I? Honestly? Sometimes. Usually late at night, when my apartment was too quiet and my mind wandered. I'd think about the good parts. Rachel at 25, dancing in our kitchen to some terrible pop song. Rachel at 28, holding my hand during my mother's cancer scare, solid and present. Rachel before she decided I was an impediment to her self-actualization. But those memories were like old photographs. Interesting to look at occasionally, but not something I wanted to live in. Sometimes I said, but not in the way you're hoping. I understand. And maybe she did, finally. Goodbye, Daniel. Goodbye, Rachel. I ended the call. My father muted the game. That sounded definitive. It was, how do you feel? I considered the question. How'd I feel? Not triumphant. Not vindicated. Not even particularly sad. Complete, I said finally. Like I've finished solving a problem that's been lingering in the background. My mother appeared in the doorway. Was that Rachel? Yes. Is she all right? No. But she will be. And you? I'm fine, Mom. I promise. She studied me with the particular intensity of mothers who've spent 3 decades learning their children's tales. You really are, aren't you? I really am. The call stopped after Christmas. Completely. I didn't hear from Rachel or the Porters again. No texts, no voicemails, no surprise visits to my office. I assumed Rachel had finally accepted reality. Or her family had. Or her therapist had explained that fixating on an ex-husband who'd moved to another state and build a new life was not a productive use of her emotional energy. Whatever the reason, the silence was welcome. Life continued its upward trajectory. In March, Catherine Park announced the healthcare analytics spinoff. The new company would be called Vital Metrics, and I'd be the chief strategy officer with a significant equity stake. We'd secured series of funding of $24 million from a venture capital firm that specialized in healthcare technology. My team was excellent. Priya had recruited 2 more data scientists from top-tier programs. Our healthcare workflow analyst had connections at Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, and Johns Hopkins. We were landing contracts with major hospital systems across the country. I was dating someone, a biomedical engineer named Dr. Sarah Chun, who worked at a research lab in North Austin. She was brilliant, driven, and refreshingly uncomplicated. We saw each other twice a week, enjoyed each other's company, and had no expectations beyond mutual respect and good conversation. "You're different from most guys I date," Sarah said one evening. We were at her apartment, having cooked dinner together, an elaborate Thai curry that had required 3 trips to specialty grocery stores. "How so?" "You're present. When we're together, you're actually here. But you also don't need constant reassurance or attention. It's refreshing. I've learned that relationships work better when both people have independent lives that occasionally intersect, rather than trying to merge into some codependent entity." She laughed. "That's the most engineer thing I've ever heard someone say about dating. I prefer to think of it as systematic." Same thing. Maybe it was. But systematic had worked for me. In May, I got a LinkedIn message from an old college friend, Marcus Patterson, who I hadn't spoken to in probably 5 years. We'd been in the same quantitative finance study group, back when I'd briefly considered a career in investment banking before deciding tech was more interesting. The message was short. "Dude, is this true? Rachel Porter is engaged? Didn't you guys just get divorced?" I clicked on a profile he'd linked. Rachel Porter, Cincinnati, Ohio, marketing manager at a company called Brightwell Solutions. And yes, relationship status, engaged, to someone named Jeffrey Hartman, who, according to his profile, was a senior consultant at a management consulting firm, held an MBA from Ohio State, and had the kind of generic professional headshot that suggested he'd paid for executive coaching on his LinkedIn presence. I felt nothing. Maybe the faintest hint of curiosity about the timeline. 14 months from our divorce to engage to someone else suggested she'd move quickly, but no pain, no anger, no sense of loss. Mostly I felt validated. Rachel had constructed a narrative in which I was the person preventing her from achieving her full potential. The relationship was too demanding for her MBA ambitions. She needed space and independence to figure out who she was. And then the MBA had failed, and suddenly I was the solution again. The safety net. The person who could restore stability and meaning to her life. Except I'd refused to play that role. I'd insisted on consequences. I'd maintained boundaries. And she'd found someone else to fulfill the function I'd declined. Which was fine. Good, even. Jeffrey Hartman could be the supportive partner through whatever came next. He could manage her anxiety, edit her presentations, tell her she was capable when she doubted herself. I could continue building vital metrics and dating Sarah and living a life I designed intentionally. I sent Marcus a brief reply. "Yes, true. Good for her." He responded with, "You're remarkably chill about this." Was I? I suppose I was. Because the thing about emotional discipline isn't that you suppress feelings. It's that you choose which feelings to invest in. You run the analysis, you assess the data, and you allocate your emotional resources accordingly. Rachel's engagement didn't change any variables in my life. It didn't affect vital metrics, Q2 projections, or my equity stake, or my relationship with Sarah. It was information, but it wasn't actionable information. So I acknowledged it and moved on. 2 years after the divorce, Vital Metrics had grown to 43 employees and was on track for $8 million in revenue. We'd landed contracts with 3 of the top 10 hospital systems in the country. Our predictive analytics platform had been featured in the New England Journal of Medicine for its accuracy in identifying high-risk patients. Catherine Park, still CEO of the parent company, had started making noises about an eventual acquisition or IPO. My equity stake, which had been theoretical when we launched, was now worth actual money. Not generational wealth, but enough that I'd started talking to wealth management advisors about diversification strategies. I'd moved into a house in the Barton Creek neighborhood, a modernist structure with glass walls and a view of the Greenbelt. Sarah had started keeping clothes there, though we maintained separate residences. It worked. My parents visited for Thanksgiving. My mother had been in remission for 3 years. My father had taken up woodworking and spent most of the visit examining my house's built-in shelving with a critical eye. "You paid someone to build these?" he asked, running his hand along a seam. "It came with the house. I could have done better. The joints aren't as clean as they should be. I'll keep that in mind for the next house." "You planning to move again?" "Not particularly, but life is unpredictable." My mother looked up from her book. "You seem settled, though." "Happy." "I am. We worried, after the divorce. You seemed so detached." "I was processing." "Are you done processing?" I considered the question. Was I? The divorce felt like ancient history now. Rachel was married to Jeffrey Hartman, living in Cincinnati, posting Instagram photos of their home renovation and their dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit. I knew this because I checked her profile once about 6 months ago, not out of longing, but out of mild curiosity about whether my prediction had been accurate. It had been. She found someone to fulfill the role of supportive partner. She was building a conventional life in her hometown. She seemed content, and I was here in Austin building something entirely different. Yeah, I told my mother, "I'm done processing." On Christmas Eve, I got an unexpected email from Patricia Hendricks, my divorce attorney. The subject line read, "FYI, closure on Porter matter." I opened it. "Daniel, I want to let you know that I received a call from Diane Porter's attorney last week. Apparently, Rachel asked her mother to reach out regarding the final property settlement documents. There was a minor detail about a retirement account that was never fully resolved. I reviewed the file and confirmed everything was properly finalized. I informed the attorney that any further contact should go through my office, not directly to you. But I wanted to give you a heads up in case anyone tries to reach out. Based on the conversation, it sounds like Rachel is going through some things with her new marriage and may be experiencing regret about how things ended with you. My advice remains the same. Do not engage. You've built a great life post-divorce, and there's no benefit to reopening old wounds. Best, Patricia. I read the email twice, then archived it. Regret. Of course, there was regret. Rachel had probably realized, in the way people do when the initial excitement of a new relationship fades, that Jeffrey Hartman wasn't me. That different problems didn't mean better problems. That the patterns she tried to escape by ending our marriage were actually internal patterns that had followed her into her new life. And some part of her, the part that had never really accepted consequences, wanted another chance, another conversation, another opportunity to rewrite the narrative. But that wasn't my problem to solve. Sarah and I were hosting a New Year's party. 20 people, colleagues from Vital Metrics and friend from a research lab. A low-key evening of good food and better conversation. I was making a beef Wellington, an ambitious project that required precise timing and careful temperature management. "You're very focused," Sarah observed, watching me brush egg wash onto the pastry. "Beef Wellington is 90% technique, 10% luck. Is that how you approach everything? Systematic optimization?" "It's worked well for me." She smiled. "I'm not complaining, just observing." "What are you observing?" "That you're someone who's figured out how to be successful without being ruthless. That's rare." I thought about Rachel's final accusation during our Christmas Eve conversation 2 years ago. "You've changed. You used to be kind." But I've been kind. Kind enough to let her go without a fight. Kind enough to not burden her with my anger or pain. Kind enough to refuse to be her backup plan when her primary plan failed. Sometimes kindness looked like cruelty to people who expected endless accommodation. "I try," I told Sarah. The beef Wellington came out perfectly. Golden pastry, medium rare center, rich and tender. Our guests praised it extravagantly. Priya, slightly drunk on champagne, declared it proof that Daniel Whitmore can literally do anything he puts his mind to. At midnight, we counted down the new year. Sarah kissed me, and it was comfortable and genuine and uncomplicated. My phone buzzed with a text. "Unknown number. I know I promised not to contact you, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be happy. Rachel." Reaching out one last time, from what was probably a burner phone or a friend's number. I could respond, could wish her well, could offer the kind of gracious closure that would allow both of us to move forward without any lingering tension. But I'd already given her closure. Multiple times, in multiple ways. This was about her need for absolution, not my need for communication. I deleted the text. Sarah noticed. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I said, and I meant it. 5 years after the divorce, Vital Metrics was acquired by a larger healthcare technology company for $340 million. Daniel's equity stake made him, at 37, independently wealthy. He remained as chief strategy officer for the acquiring company, continued his relationship with Dr. Sarah Chun, and eventually bought a ranch property outside Austin, where his father built him the custom shelving he'd always wanted. Rachel and Jeffrey Hartman divorced after 3 years of marriage. She moved to Nashville, pursued a certificate in life coaching, and started a business helping women rediscover themselves after major life transitions. Her Instagram presence suggested she'd found a measure of peace, though her posts occasionally featured vague references to past regrets and lessons learned the hard way. They never spoke again. Daniel occasionally thought about their 7 years together, but only in the abstract way one thinks about a book they'd read long ago. Interesting at the time, formative perhaps, but not something they'd choose to reread. The calculus had been simple. In the end, Rachel had wanted a different life. Daniel had let her pursue it. And in the absence of their relationship, both of them had become exactly who they were going to become. The difference was Daniel had chosen his outcome. Rachel had discovered hers by accident, and that, more than anything else, explained everything.
Thanks for listening.